you want to build resilience because it's a tough world.
Yeah.
Are we putting our kids in a situation where the way we're managing them now with various things, including pet loss, we're actually not doing them any favors?
If we're listening to their needs in the moment, I don't think it's going to do harm. Thank you. Because if we're talking about resilience later in life, if you're able to express your needs, it means you know what your needs are. And if you know what your needs are, then through coaching, through therapy, through discussions with good friends, you can build a plan on meeting those needs. And that builds resilience.
Welcome back to the Paws Effect podcast, where we delve deep into the heart of pet care, pet health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Dr Carra, and today we have a special episode dedicated to a topic that touches many of our lives: pet loss and how to handle it, especially with children. Joining us is Sarah Rogers, a renowned mentor and life coach. Sarah's mission is to equip people to face life and live it to its full potential, using practical and simple tools to overcome challenges and shift towards a purposeful and meaningful life. Today, she'll be sharing her insights on equipping us, especially our children, to handle the loss of a beloved pet. Stay tuned as we explore this sensitive but really important topic. So welcome back to the Paws Effect podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Carra, and I have a really special guest with me today, Sarah Rogers. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We've been talking about this for a while, haven't we?
We have. A couple of months?
Yeah. So finally our schedules are aligning and we've got the opportunity. And of course, our subject today is quite serious, but I've asked you to discuss this for a few reasons. There are a few things that we have in common, both mothers.
Yeah. True.
We have a son that's similar ages. So we're going to be talking about pet loss and in particular, hopefully diving into managing your kids and how best to cope with the loss of a pet. So just my opening question, give some context as to why I have asked you, because you are not a pet professional, but you work with us, don't you?
Yeah. So I've been working with you for almost 2 years.
Is that as long as that?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, I was trying to think back. Yeah, I think it's 2 years. And I'm a coach, both life coach and business coach. And I work with people in, I guess, what you would call their messiness. And if we are going to talk about grief, then grief is also messy. And about a month ago, we had the unfortunate experience of having to put down one of our dogs. And it was a really difficult time and we had to help our kids through it, my husband and I. And so I guess that's kind of how we landed up here together.
Yes, well, we discuss a lot of things,
Yeah,
don't
we do.
I mean, we could have a whole series of podcast episodes on the things we discuss.
Yeah, we could.
But obviously, grief is a tough one. I mean, I've spoken about pet loss with various people and I think, it's quite a personal thing.
Yeah.
But I think in particular, and I mean, the reason why I'd love, and I suppose we can start here, and I'm sure we're going to unpack this in different ways, but the reason I'm asking is, it's hard to know whether you're getting it right when it comes to managing your children in particular.
Yeah, I think grief is such a personal journey, and I think it also depends on the type of pet owner that you are, because there are different ways of looking at pets. In preparation for our chat today, I was just thinking through some of the experiences some of my clients have had and how different people are in that journey. So I had a client who lives in Cape Town and he had a husky who was like his baby, and he lost his husky about 1.5 years ago, and I remember walking through the journey with him, and there was times where he couldn't quite believe that his pet had died. He was struggling with it, and ultimately at the end what we decided on was no one can really judge you on your journey. You kind of have to go through the motions, and it's the same for our kids. We kind of have to meet them where they're at. And so one of the best things I can suggest is that if you've got older children, and my daughter's in her teens, is kind of asking her or them, what do you need? So sometimes it might be physical affection, sometimes it might be space, sometimes it might be information. It really just depends on how old your kids are and what their needs are at the moment.
That's great advice. And I think, one thing that you said really resonated there is, it's a different journey for different people. But also what I've found from a personal experience is it changes through your life, depending on where you are and how resilient you're feeling at that time. So, I mean, I've had periods of time where I've lost pets, and I just, it's been a case of just suppressing, especially when I've been consulting as a vet, you've got to just carry on. You've got other things going on in your life, and you're just not ready to cope.
Yeah.
And so there is that, I'm going to suppress this, and it potentially probably does bubble up somewhere else.
It will, 100%.
And then other times where I have just been totally hit by the loss of, I feel in particular, a cat called Molly that I wasn't even with for very long, but she really had such a great impact on me that when I lost it was horrific.
Yeah.
And you wonder how much you process of all the other things in your life when you are faced with those kind of situations, whether am I just grieving this cat, or is this because I've let all the other things,
is there more?
Is there more to this?
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to our kids, the biggest thing for me is I don't want to do any harm. And there's very much from the perspective of being a parent that kind of you want to protect them.
Yeah.
So, do you just leave them out of it and, hope that, no, don't worry about it, or do you make them part of the process? And what are the benefits for that from your experience? So perhaps you can start with, should we just leave our kids out of the process, or should we really be?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
I would include them because I think children learn so much from us, and they often learn from us how we act rather than what we say. So they will know something is up, and they will ask where that pet has gone. And I think it's healthier to take them on the journey and discuss with them age appropriately what's happened. My son has Down syndrome, and so for him, how we took him through the journey was we got this, it's called social stories, and basically they very simplified explanations of what's happening in life. And so he knew Harry, our dog, was sick. And so we wrote a story about how Harry was very sick and how the vets had done everything that they could to make him better, but Harry died and he wasn't going to come home anymore. That's how we took our son through the journey. I think it's healthy for them to learn how to model grief or healthy grief, because that will go into all the areas of their life, not just that one thing. I think the risk of leaving your children out might make them feel isolated. It might make them feel like they've got a lot of questions that maybe they can't speak to you about. So taking them through the journey helps them move through the stages of grief in a healthy way and opens up a beautiful, vulnerable, more intimate relationship with them.
One with some communication, which is what we...
Yeah.
And so I know I'm jumping a little bit here, but I met someone the other day and was talking about, do they have any pets? And they went through, I think, quite a long journey with their one particular dog and decided they can't do it again. That it was so traumatic for them. And I think that for me is the saddest thing, is that you had this wonderful bond, so much so that you're traumatized by their loss, but you don't want to face that loss again.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your children, is this an opportunity to teach your kids that loss is also an opportunity to kind of form great memories and a learning opportunity and a different way of connecting?
Yeah, I think as humans we wired to connect with each other, but also with our pets who are and often become part of the family. And sometimes when that bond is so strong, it can be very traumatic. And sometimes what we face then when we are out in the world is people not understanding that intensity of the emotion. So I think having that healthy communication with your children through the process of mourning, whether it's a long process or whether something happens quite quickly, helps them understand that they can have those healthy connections. And yes, there is a risk to it because, when we connect with things and people, there is a risk. But I think taking the time to explain to them that it's normal, that they'll go through a process of grieving, and you can even describe the different stages and how it lessens over time. I think what that does is allows them to learn and grow and use that again in later in life as well.
When you're not with them.
Yeah.
Rather again, then suppress it as an adult or ignore those feelings.
And I think because, when you mentioned earlier that, am I grieving just this loss or am I grieving more? Then if we are able to give them those tools in the moment when they're grieving big things, they've got those to kind of pull from their tool belt.
Hello, I'm Dr. Carra, a veterinarian and the host of the Paws Effect podcast. Our show is all about enhancing the lives of pets by providing reliable, science-based advice and engaging in discussions with experts in veterinary medicine, pet nutrition, and animal behavior. As a professional with years of experience in both the UK and South Africa, I run a 24-hour veterinary hospital and an online pet store. I'm also pursuing a master's in animal nutrition and consult for UltraPet, a local veterinary-grade pet food manufacturer. My passion lies in sharing knowledge and helping pet owners make informed decisions about their pet companions. The Paws Effect podcast is rapidly growing, attracting a dedicated, engaging audience of pet owners who are passionate about their pets' health and well-being. Our listeners trust us for credible, informative content that empowers them to provide the best care for their animals. We are looking for sponsors who share our commitment to pet health and who want to reach a highly engaged and expanding audience. Partnering with us means aligning your brand with trusted and influential content that resonates deeply with pet owners. As a sponsor, you'll benefit from high visibility on a platform that is used for multiple purposes, including educational content, product recommendations, and community building. We offer various sponsorship packages designed to fit your marketing goals and budget, ensuring that your brand gets the reach and the impact it deserves. Join us in making a difference in the lives of pets and their families. Let's work together to bring valuable insights and quality products to our passionate audience. If you're interested in sponsoring the Paws Effect podcast, please get in touch. I look forward to partnering with you. Before we resume our conversation, let's address a vital aspect to pet care, your puppy's nutrition. Allow me to introduce you to a personal favorite, UltraPet's premium recipe for large breed puppies. I've relied on this for all my dogs, and it's truly made a difference. This puppy food offers a balanced blend of nutrients, with 30% protein, 15% fat, and 4% fiber, supporting your companion's growth and development. Featuring a delectable chicken and rice flavor, UltraPet caters for even the pickiest eaters. It's available in 2 pack sizes, a 8 kg and a 20 kg, and it's suitable for households of any size. What sets this puppy food apart is its meticulous formulation, developed by experts for a complete and balanced diet. It includes essential vitamins and minerals and prebiotics for a healthy digestive system and a robust immune system. With high-quality protein sources and essential fatty acids, this food promotes muscle development, healthy skin and coat. Plus calcium and phosphorus strengthen bones and teeth. UltraPet has mastered the balance between nutrition and taste, making it a top choice for puppy food. Find it at your local pet store and give it to your companion for the best start. Your pet will thank you, and you'll appreciate UltraPet's commitment to optimal nutrition. Now, let's get back to our conversation. So let's talk age appropriate. Okay. So, I'm giving you a question here that you may not be able to give me an answer to as such. But what are age appropriate times? I mean, when can you start talking to your children about loss? I mean, is there 3? You're not going to be sitting down going, how do you manage it? When you've got, like you say, you've got a teenager who may say, I don't want to talk about this right now. What are some of the tools that you can offer our listeners in terms of trying to manage things appropriate to your children's age?
So I think following your child's lead is the most important. So answering their questions with their ability in mind. So it could be a case of where did Harry go? And for my daughter who's in her teens, we can explain, he was really ill, and there was nothing more that we could do, and it was better for him not to suffer anymore. She's in her teens, she can kind of wrap her head around that at some point. For younger children, it might just be a case of saying, he was very sick and the doctors couldn't fix him. I would steer away from saying things like we had to put him to sleep or we had to put him down, because that doesn't really give your child good handles, and then it might create some fear around sleep. It might create some fear around going to the doctor. It might create some fear around surgery even. But for the young children, I would just follow their lead and answer their questions the way they need them to be answered. And then as your children kind of get older, then you can give a little bit more detail. But reading your child's cues and making sure you're not providing too much information. Because I think we were talking earlier about how sometimes we give our children too much. So it's it's a balancing act and just understanding your child best and giving them what they need in the moment.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I think there's something you said there that also made me remember a conversation between us as colleagues, and that often it's the doctor or the vet couldn't do anything further. And this blame. Why is there this huge blame? Either owners taking or feeling responsible for their pet's death when, I think, why do you have to attach a reason to death?
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of children go, the doctor or the vet killed my pet. And that's quite a traumatic thing also to go away with, because, we're trying to build trust with our clients, and longer term, it's really important that they trust that we're going to do the right thing, not ultimately kill their pet. So, in terms of managing the framework, why is guilt often part of the process?
It's so interesting you say that. My reference for saying that was saying that, you guys have done everything you possibly could. You tried your hardest, but sometimes death happens. It's so interesting that it can be interpreted the other way. I think it's sometimes easier to say not much more could be done. Like, we've done our best, we've tried our best, but we couldn't do anything more. Not only for our children, for ourselves, And I think that's why people wrestle with, how do I make the call to put my pet down? It feels a very godlike decision. I have this control, life or death, in that moment. But it's very interesting that you attributed it from a negative perspective, where
we see a lot of guilt. And we try and manage a lot of those emotions, particularly sort of in the consult or post euthanasia of pets.
Course.
Particularly because a lot of people are financially limited, so they go, if I could only afford to, I could, could have done more. We could have had that surgery, or we could have discovered this was earlier. We didn't have the money to take the x-rays, for example, and discover that there was a foreign body. We were limited. We delayed seeking help and treatment, and I feel guilty for that. And so, I just know with some of the work that we do together, that kind of accepting that you do the best you can with what you've got, and that guilt is often something you can manage.
Yeah, I think for anybody there will be a little bit of guilt in any grief journey. If only I had, if only we could have, if only, insert whatever reason here. And I think it's important to potentially hold that quite loosely, because if you focus in on it, I think it's going to eat away at you. Whereas if you allow the feelings to come and go, yes, you'll have those waves of guilt, you'll have waves of sadness, even anger potentially, clients towards you in the room, at the situation. At home, your children might even act out during the grieving process, but you just have to let it come and let it go, and have those open discussions. Maybe the vet's in the consult room, there is not much more we can do. These are your options, rather than holding on to something like guilt, which could just eat you up inside.
I think another thing I've faced that I'd love your opinion on is when, we were talking about allowing your children to have too much responsibility. I suppose that's probably the right way of setting the scene. And, it's involving them, but not letting them feel like they have to decide. It's not, well, what do you want to do? It's, we talk age appropriate things, but, to be putting big decisions on your children, they need to know that you are in control of it, that, you financially, emotionally, physically, that you've got the situation under control so that you can best support them afterwards. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. So like we were saying at the beginning, we had taken our Harry to the vet a couple days before. We had to put him down. And the morning of, when we woke up, we could see he just wasn't himself. He was just struggling to breathe. And so we made the decision, my husband and I together, that for his health, we had to put him down. It wasn't fair to keep him at home like that any longer. And, we had a super supportive vet. She was phenomenal. But we made the decision and we told the children, this is how it's going to be. So we woke my daughter up because it was early in the morning. She came through. She said goodbye. It was very emotional. But at the end of the day, we didn't put that on her. We told her within a beautiful, soft and gentle way that this is what was happening, so that she didn't have to then live with the responsibility of that afterwards. She will have to live with the memories of it, but she doesn't have to live with the responsibility of it. And I think it's really important that you have a firm foundation, that your children feel safe in that moment, that they know that mom and dad, they've got us. They know what they're doing. Sometimes we don't know what we're doing. But for them, we have to appear like we are together in the decision. I think that's really important. And that, we're doing the best for your pet, we're doing the best for the family, and that's how it goes. Because I don't think any child should have to carry the responsibility and weight of making a decision like that at all.
Or feeling, like you said, that there's conflict between parents or family members, like, your mom wanted that, or your dad wanted that, or your dad wouldn't pay, or vice versa.
No, those kind of conversations should be done behind closed doors. Children should never have kind of any idea that that's happening.
And in terms of, you said you obviously, your husband went and was with Harry, but taking your kids through the actual process, what are your feelings on them witnessing the process of euthanasia?
I wouldn't. I think I've been through it 2 or 3 times with my own pets. It is such a visceral response. And from a non-medical person, it's very difficult to be in the room. I think as an adult, you need to decide, whether you want to be in the room or not. Like we said at the very beginning, it's very personal, and we can't judge somebody else's journey based off of our needs, wants, and desires. So if you struggle to be in the room, to have your children in the room, I think would be very, very difficult. It's very hard for a young child to process what's happening in front of them. I think communicating up front, kind of, this is what's happening, and what we did was we said, Daddy's taking Harry to the doctor and he won't come home, and then helping them, grieve after that. But I wouldn't advise having your children in the room. I think it's very emotional for you in the moment. I think then to have to deal with their emotion in the moment as well. Are you able to be present enough for them when you in your own intense grief? Yeah. So
your feelings that you shouldn't really, I mean, your kids can see you mourn and see you upset,
yes.
but you shouldn't be falling apart in front of your children. Is that not advisable? I mean, I'm thinking back to my sobbing as I put my cat to sleep, thinking my poor child had to witness that.
No, I think crying and experiencing grief and emotions is healthy because it gives them license to experience those things as well. I think in those moments, I think grief has that potential to draw you closer and you're able to just meet each other in a very vulnerable space. But if you are really struggling with the loss of a pet, then I would suggest that you reach out to a counselor, a therapist, a coach who can help you through that journey. I would just be careful of putting that on your children and having your children become an aid for you while you grieve, because you would actually want to be the aid for your children. Crying in front of them, no problem. Experiencing emotions, no problem. You just don't want to put that on them and make them your counselor or your therapist. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, back to the crying, because like you say, we all deal with things in different ways, and maybe some people may shed a tear and they out of sight, and other people are very open.
Yeah.
And I've gone through various journeys depending on, like we said, where we are in life and other circumstances. But your kids crying, like I'm asking this question because I know we are very protective, and I know we've sort of covered this to a certain extent, but we want to protect our kids. We want them to get over it. We don't want them to hurt. We never want them to. But the benefit of them actually experiencing this is sort of an opportunity to gift them something that will help them later on in life.
Yeah.
So how do you say, like, okay, you could cry, or what's that?
It's so hard because I think my heart breaks when I see my children struggling with anything. And you want to scoop them up, you want to tell them it's going to be okay, you want to
make it go away.
Yes. But we have to sit in it with them. And we have to let them grieve the way they need to grieve. So for my son, the way he's grieved is, I think it's been about 6 weeks since we had to put Harry down. He still asks. Every so often, he'll ask me, where's Harry? Especially when we drive past our vet. He says to me, is Harry there? And I have to say, no, Harry died. Harry's not coming home. And then it's fine. He'll then say, in his way, he'll say, who's Chase's best friend now? Chase is our other dog. And I say, you're Chase's best friend now, or my daughter's Chase's best friend, and that's okay. My daughter experiences emotions a bit more typically in terms of crying or maybe feeling a bit frustrated or angry. And so we just have to let her be in that moment and not try and say everything's going to be okay.
Or that's enough now.
Or that's enough.
Which is very tempting.
Yeah.
Like you've had your time. Now, like, let's move on.
So, yeah. And I think...
Because it's very tempting to say that sometimes. Like, I can't deal with this anymore. Yeah. Can you please be over it so that I can?
Yeah, and I think there was, I was reading an article before we started chatting, and there's this type of grief called, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, so please excuse me, disenfranchised grief, which means I'm experiencing a type of grief that other people can't relate to. So it could be the loss of a pet who we see as a child or a part of the family, or it could be, any other number of types of grief. And so people expect us to move on because they can't understand what we're feeling. And so for our kids, it's the same. I think they feel it really intensely. And so we just have to allow them to be and ask them what they need in the moment, especially for your older children. And I do this with my clients as well. What do you need right now? If I need space, that's okay. Go take some space. Go sit in your room, listen to your music, go cry, go have a hot bath. Do you need a hug? Yeah, I need a hug.
I mean, I know you've asked me that question before. What do you need? What do you need from this? And often I go like, I don't know. I don't know. Because historically, I mean, it's back to the whole, we used to suppress everything. Nobody was asking us that. And now, people going, what do you need? I don't often know what I need.
Yeah.
And I think my fear in the way things are changing and the way we were managed when our pets died and we were young, with our parents going, either leaving us out of it or saying that's enough now. You've had your time. To now us going, like, feel your feelings. Is what are the longer term repercussions going to be? Are we going to and you know where I'm going with this, but are we going to have children who don't have resilience and are actually, and I'm pleased, and my listeners need to understand that I'm being very candid and very soft when I'm saying this, but are like soft and weak, and those are, you want resilience and you want to build resilience because it's a tough world.
Yeah.
Are we putting our kids in a situation where the way we're managing them now with various things, including pet loss, we're actually not doing them any favors?
I think it's about extremes, right? And so for me, I think it's very important that our kids feel seen and heard, but that we still have boundaries. So not necessarily around mourning, I'm just talking in general. In mourning, it is messy. It's visceral, it's scary, it doesn't feel like it's going to end. But we know from experience that it does. It lessens over time, or our ability to carry grief increases over time. And so I think if we're giving in to every whim, then we have a problem. But if we're listening to their needs in the moment, Mom, I'm feeling really sad that Harry's gone. Okay, what do you need right now? I need a hug. I don't think that's down the line gonna, I don't think it's gonna do harm. Thank you. Yeah. I think it's when we are going, here's your iPad for 14 hours, deal with your grief through the iPad for 14 hours. I think that's when we're doing harm with our kids. I think allowing them to express themselves, allowing them to express their needs and then helping them meet those needs, I think that's really helpful. I know parenting has swung so wildly from when we were children to now. I think kids need boundaries. I think kids need appropriate discipline. But I do think that they need a voice and they need to be able to express their needs, because if we're talking about resilience later in life, if you're able to express your needs, it means you know what your needs are. And if you know what your needs are, then through coaching, through therapy, through discussions with good friends, you can build a plan on meeting those needs. And that builds resilience.
So my son, probably in 20 or 30 years, when asked by someone like you, what do you need, will be able to say.
I would hope so.
Versus me like, I don't know. I don't know what I need.
When somebody says, I don't know, typically what I do, especially in a coaching relationship where I've known you, I can give you a few options and say, well, in the past, this has helped. Do you feel like that would help? And that's something you could do with your kids as well, especially if they're like, I don't know. And then you could throw out a few healthy options.
Yeah, not have a glass of wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eat a whole bar of chocolate.
Well, hopefully you're not offering your son wine.
No. I just mean as I'm picking my coping strategies.
No, I'm teasing you.
So let's go through, before we lose the opportunity, what are some of the things that we can offer our kids in terms of keeping memories alive? So maybe the whole processing part of, do we do a little ceremony? Is that a good part of it? Is that a case of going, I know that you're really good at having discussions with your kids and them communicating, but there are a lot of parents or listeners who will say, hang on a minute, when I ask my kids, what do you want? They're like, if you're lucky if you get a yes or no. Most of the time it's just a little grunt.
Yeah.
Or, I don't want to talk about it. I think that's one of my son's favorite lines. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, there's a few things you can do. We didn't do a ceremony, but had my daughter asked one, we probably would have done something. Like I mentioned, my client out in Cape Town, he built this beautiful rose garden for his husky. it was exquisite. You can get a little nose print and paw prints. I've seen that done. Urns for keeping your pet's ashes. That's something that you could do as well. Again, I think what I do is follow your children's lead. If you know that it would be too much, then maybe hold back and you could just do something simple like the nose or the paw print. If you think it would help bring closure for your children, then you could do a ceremony. It could be anything from just talking about your favorite memory of your pets. We used to talk about how Harry was a bit of a mountain goat. He could scale anything. We tried everything to keep that dog in a part of our garden. I still don't understand. He could basically climb up a straight wall. The one thing we did for my daughter was we sent her all the photos. And so she's got all of the photos on her phone and she can scroll through them as she wants. It is very much, again, follow your child's lead and see what they want. And if they don't respond, give them options and say, we could do this or we could do that. Which would you prefer?
Or let me know when you're ready.
Or let me know when you're ready. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I know from experience, my son wants to bury everything. We find a dead lizard and let's bury I think that's, obviously his form of closure for things.
Yeah.
But we offer the paw prints at our practice, and it is so well received because it's a keepsake,
It is.
That people either will frame or use as a bookmark or whatever they choose
or
to do
tattoo.
with it. Or a tattoo. Yes, a lot of people do that. So there are lots of ways and I think a reminder that in processing things with your children, that you too are also
absolutely
facing that. And it's a great, like you said, a great opportunity to bond.
Yeah.
So, I mean, before we, again, I know we're running out of time. The one thing I love about the coaching work that you do, and when we first started our discussions, I said, why? Why do you do what you do? And why did you not, say, go into clinical psychology?
Yeah.
And I loved your explanation, and I'd love you to share that with the listeners, because I think it's stuck with me for 2 years now.
You might have to remind me what I said.
So I will. So very much it was along the lines that you like to give tools.
Yeah.
And that you like to not see outcomes. There's no expected outcome, but that there is a walking a journey with people and giving tools and equipping people with the ability to handle things and come to a conclusion, not this long drawn out, potentially sort of therapy that keeps people in that same state. Yeah. And you keep people very accountable in terms of whether it's, okay, do you need to do the work or, what have you done to manage the situation? You are responsible for you. Yeah. How would you say that relates to sort of how you tackle sort of the parenting and the...
Oh, that's a big question. I love what I do. I've been doing it for almost 10 years now, and not a day goes by that I'm not grateful that I get to sit in spaces like this and do podcasts with you, or see my clients reach the goals that they set out for themselves at the beginning of the process. It is very much about just opening your eyes and seeing the possibilities, and then working back and going, right, what do we need to achieve that? Let's break it down. Let's put a plan in place. And then the questions of, how do I hold you accountable? And have you done what you need to do? Feels a bit school teacherish in a way. But I think, in this process, well, if we're talking about mourning and grieving, a coach or a therapist or a good friend or a vet just needs to give people space. And we don't need to solve, especially in this space, because there is no solve. We can't rush it. We just have to allow the time to pass and just remind the person, your child, your partner, whoever, that they've got it within themselves to be able to get through the next step each day. And now I've forgotten the question. I'm very sorry.
No, you answered it. You answered it. And so, I mean, that that you will, like you say, you will get through it, and that you will be stronger for it, not more traumatized.
I wouldn't necessarily say at the beginning of the journey, a grieving journey, that it's going to be okay, because no one wants to hear that.
Okay.
I think the most powerful statements that you can make for anybody going through a grieving process, whether it's a pet or someone that they've lost someone in their life, is I'm here for you, and I'll be here for you, and don't worry about me. I'm going to sit with you in the space. Because often you feel so much. And so if somebody goes, it's going to be okay, it doesn't feel like it's going to be okay. But I'm here, that's okay.
Sure, it's a difficult thing, because I always want to tell my child that it's going to be okay. Tomorrow will be better.
I think you can show them it's going to be okay through bringing them a hot chocolate and loving them, or letting your teenager sit in their room, or
excusing that bad behavior because you know where it comes from.
Yeah, just for once.
Just for once.
Or reading them a story, or just giving them a little longer hug. Those moments are moments of, I can breathe, that's going to be okay. But telling someone it's going to be okay feels a bit, we want to provide a verbal reassurance, but in the moment of just being there, I think that's the most important and profound thing you can do for anybody grieving.
My final question for you.
Yes.
It's very tempting, particularly with children, and I have to be honest, it's us too. I see it with adults, to get another pet. I mean, even in my explanation before, I was like, oh, why would you not get another pet? You've loved this thing. You're capable of love. You've felt so strongly about this. To not experience that feeling, people are so scared of loss. But what are your feelings on? I mean, you haven't replaced Harry.
Yeah.
And I think your kids may be hinting at like.
Oh no, they have. They have. I think it's so personal. So, and I think it's the type of pet owner you are, where you are in your life. Maybe you've got young kids. Maybe that now to bring in a small animal and have young kids, that might be a bit much. But I think it's really allow yourself the time to grieve. And in your grieving, if you feel like you want to fill that space, by all means, go and do it. If you feel like you need some time, that's okay too. I think don't put your needs onto other people, because like we said at the beginning, it's such a personal thing. And if you're not sure, take the time. There are loads of shelters out there with animals that are waiting for homes. They'll be there when you're ready. I think that's just the case of take it one step at a time and see when you're ready and go from there.
And if people want to contact you and get your assistance with whether it's mentorship or coaching, how can they contact you?
So you can find me on the socials, Sarah Rogers Coach, all one word, Instagram and Facebook. And then I have a website, sarahrogers.co.za. You're welcome to contact me like that.
And even in terms of business, like a business and corporates, you work with teams, individuals.
I work across the board with teams that are high performance teams, or I work with individuals who are wanting to start their own businesses, or for people going through breakups, or people who need coaching around burnout. There's loads of different ways of coaching interventions that I can assist with. But I think the easiest way is to reach out via the website or on my email, which is sarah@sarahrogers.co.za. Very easy to remember.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been fun.
For your insight into what is quite a delicate subject. I hope I haven't upset any of our listeners. But
me too.
But no, you certainly. I think your approach is really great, and really grateful for your time and advice on this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah Rogers.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt episode of the Paws Effect podcast. A big thank you to Sarah Rogers for her invaluable insights into helping children cope with the loss of a pet. Remember, addressing pet loss openly can make a significant difference to how our kids handle grief and loss. And if you found today's discussion helpful, please like, share, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring meaningful and impactful content. Join us next time for another episode packed with expert advice and tips for pet owners. Until then, take care of your friends and don't forget to give them a hug from me. Welcome back to Just for Pets. You're with Dr. Carra.
Hello, Doctor. It's Chanel the Persian. And, I can't seem to stop retching to get this hairball up.
Are you on a special diet?
Excuse me?
Hairball control food will really help. And maybe some Laxapet. And lucky for you, Just for Pets have a big range.
Well, how early can I get some?
Order today and we'll deliver pronto.
Wow, I feel better already.
Justforpets.co.za. Vet approved, pet adored. Get it all to your door.